For millennia, human history unfolded under the sign of war and expansion. Great states emerged, grew, and collapsed, shaping, and in some cases, continuing to shape, the face of the modern world. The empire is the most powerful form of state, where diverse countries and peoples are united under the authority of a single monarch, an emperor. Let us examine 10 of the largest empires ever to appear on the global stage. Strangely enough, this list does not include the Roman, the Ottoman, or even the Empire of Alexander the Great. History has seen even greater ones. I will refer to official historical data. The order is by ascending size. The Japanese Empire. Japan is the only empire still marked as such on today's political map. Now, the status is mostly symbolic, but just 70 years ago, Tokyo was the central hub of imperialism in Asia. Japan, an ally of the Third Reich and fascist Italy, attempted to seize control of the western Pacific coast, engaging in a vast front against the Americans. This period marked the peak of Japan's territorial expansion, as the empire controlled nearly the entire Pacific maritime zone and 7.4 million square kilometers of land, from Sakhalin to New Guinea. Its success was short-lived, and by 1945, the empire's colonial system collapsed. Yet the memory of Japan's military might and imperial ambition still lingers, particularly in Southeast Asia. The Persian Empire is one of the most ancient in history. Its foundation dates back to the middle of the first millennium BCE. Persian tribes conquered the lands of all earlier empires in the Middle East: Egyptians, Assyrians, Babylonians, and Medes. Under the Achaemenid dynasty in the 6th to 4th centuries BCE, the Persian realm covered nearly 8 million square kilometers, almost twice the size of Julius Caesar's empire. The legacy of the ancestors of modern Iranians passed into the hands of Alexander the Great, who conquered most of the empire. After the Macedonian invasion, Persia re-emerged a few times on the map of the ancient world until its final fall at the hands of Arab conquerors in the 7th century. Persia's contributions to culture, governance, and religious tolerance had a lasting influence on the civilizations that followed. The Portuguese Empire of the 16th century. The Portuguese sought a way to escape Spanish dominance on the Iberian Peninsula. In 1497, they discovered a sea route to India, marking the beginning of a vast colonial empire. 3 years earlier, the Treaty of Tordesillas had been signed between the two rival nations, dividing the known world between them on rather unfavorable terms for Portugal. Yet the Portuguese still managed to amass over 10 million square kilometers of territory, with Brazil occupying the largest share. Portuguese colonies spanned the globe, from African coast to Indonesia and Macau. The handover of Macau to China in 1999 brought an end to the Portuguese colonial era, which had lasted for more than 5 centuries. Its legacy remains visible today in the languages, architecture, and culture of its former colonies. The Arab Empire marked the beginning of Islam's golden age, spanning the 7th to 13th centuries CE. The Caliphate was established immediately after the death of the Prophet Muhammad in 632, with his Medina-based community as its core. A century of Arab conquests expanded the empire to 13 million square kilometers, stretching across all 3 continents of the Old World. The Caliphate became a center of learning, science, and philosophy. Cities like Baghdad, Cordoba, and Damascus flourished as global cultural hubs. By the mid-13th century, internal strife had weakened the Caliphate, and it was easily overtaken, first by the Mongols, then by the Ottomans, who built another great empire in the region. The French Empire. France became the 3rd European power, after Spain and Portugal, to focus on overseas expansion. Starting in 1546 with the founding of New France, now Quebec, the French began forming what would become the global Francophone world. After losing colonial battles in North America to the Anglo-Saxons, and later inspired by Napoleon's campaigns, the French conquered almost all of West Africa. By the mid-20th century, the empire covered 13.5 million square kilometers and had a population exceeding 110 million. French culture, law, language, and education spread throughout its colonies. In 1962, most French territories gained independence, as colonial maintenance had become economically and politically unsustainable. Yet France's influence in those regions remained strong. The Chinese Empire is the oldest empire in Asia, the cradle of Eastern civilization. Early dynasties ruled from the 2nd millennium BCE, but a unified empire was only established in 221 BCE during the Qin dynasty. Chinese civilization developed independently, producing paper, gunpowder, the compass, and movable type printing long before Europe. At its peak in the early 20th century, the last imperial dynasty of China controlled 14.7 million square kilometers, about 1.5 times larger than modern China, largely due to the inclusion of Mongolia. The Xinhai Revolution of 1911 ended imperial rule and established a republic. Yet China remains a major global force, rooted in its ancient imperial legacy. The Spanish Empire. Spain's global dominance began with Columbus's voyages, which opened new frontiers for Catholic missions and territorial expansion. In the 16th century, nearly the entire Western Hemisphere was under the rule of the Spanish king and his invincible armada. Spain was known as the empire where the sun never set. Its possessions spanned 1/7 of the world's land surface, around 20 million square kilometers, and controlled almost half of the planet's maritime routes. The mighty empires of the Aztecs and Incas were crushed by conquistadors, and in their place arose Spanish-speaking Latin America. Spanish language, Catholicism, and cultural practices became dominant across vast territories, leaving a lasting legacy to this day. The Russian Empire was the largest continental monarchy in human history. Its roots go back to the Grand Duchy of Moscow and the Tsardom of Russia. In 1721, Peter the Great proclaimed the imperial status of Russia. By the late 19th century, the empire stretched from Finland to Chukotka, reaching a peak of 24.5 million square kilometers. It had a population of 130 million people, including over 100 different ethnic groups. Russian territory once included Alaska and even part of California, until their sale to the United States in 1867. Though the empire fell to revolution, its political and cultural legacy still shapes the modern geopolitical landscape. The British Empire. Over 400 years of expansion, Britain managed to outcompete other colonial giants, France, the Netherlands, Spain, and Portugal. At its height, London ruled over 1/4 of the world's land surface, more than 34 million square kilometers across all inhabited continents, along with vast oceanic territories. The British Empire became a symbol of globalization. The English language, parliamentary democracy, industrial innovations, and British cultural values spread across the globe. Formally, the empire still exists today as the Commonwealth, with countries like Canada and Australia remaining closely tied to the British Crown in political and cultural terms. The Mongol Empire was the greatest empire of all time, built with one sole purpose: war. It was founded in 1206 under the leadership of Genghis Khan and expanded rapidly over just a few decades to 38 million square kilometers, from the Baltic Sea to Vietnam, killing every 10th person on Earth along the way. By the late 13th century, Mongol domains covered 1/4 of the world's land and 1/3 of its population, then nearly 500 million people. More than just a war machine, the Mongol Empire created unprecedented links between East and West, opening trade routes, diplomacy, and cultural exchanges on a global scale. On the ruins of this empire, the modern geopolitical structure of Eurasia began to form.